All right, and we are live. Welcome to the August virtual meetup for Wholesaling Made Simple. My name is Brian Snyder. I'm CEO of Simple Wholesaling. Also, we have the meetup of Wholesaling Made Simple, and that's what we're here for this time. You know, a lot of times we're able to, we meet in person. We have a pretty good group that meet here in Indianapolis, but for tonight, we're going to be virtual. We've been doing this throughout the pandemic, just saying virtual. So we're going to do it again tonight. And I am very, very excited about just the content and the guests that I have on here with me tonight. I feel like I feel very honored to be able to talk to you gentlemen. I know you guys all operate at a high level within your business and do extremely great work. So, and I know last year we had a meetup in person where we had the owners of the businesses come down for the title companies and they got their time to shine. But really this time I wanted to make sure I had the operations people, the guys that are actually, you know, the ones that are doing all the work and handling all the issues and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be great to have you guys on here. But I have Matt Trojan from Monument Title and Eric Downing from Hawker Title, and then Mike Coop from Eagle Land Title. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And if you don't mind, let's just go around the horn. You guys can kind of introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about just your guys' business, what you guys do, kind of, you know, how long you've been in business. Give me maybe a little history, just so if people don't know who you are, don't know anything about your title companies, you can kind of just fill them in a little bit. So, Matt, let's start with you, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. So, my name is Matt Trojan. I'm the escrow manager at Monument Title, and Monument has been around for I think this is just over 2 years of operation, about 2.5 at this point. Dan Bostic started the company really with a strong background in investor business, investor closings, and you know, that was the bulk of our early clients. But you know, we've moved into, you know, basically full range of offerings, commercial and you know, lender-driven files, and you know, we still have a lot of investor clients that bring us a lot of closings, and we're very, very familiar with that. So that's how, you know, we got connected with Brian and, you know, his investor pool, and really what you know, one of our multiple specialties that we have.
So awesome, man. Yeah, thanks a lot. And then all these businesses, these are obviously people that we work with all the time. I have, you know, great respect for these gentlemen and their businesses and stuff as well. So close multiple deals with all these guys. So can't speak highly enough of them. So Eric, how about you, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always enjoy being a part of the Simple Wholesaling Meetup and just getting to know your team. I'm Eric Downing, Hawker & Associates, Hawker Title. We are a law firm and a title company. Janet Hawker, our owner, started this business about 30 years ago. She's a real estate attorney, so that's kind of how we developed the title side of the business, just kind of by accident, if you will. Just being an attorney, she took on quite a few title orders in those days. We've developed to a point now where we're closing in somewhere between 550, 650 transactions a month. And we do a lot of work with investors. Kind of that relationship, as you know, Brian, started when we had the HUD contract several years ago. We were the most hated title company throughout that period because HUD forced you to close with us. And we had to be quite demanding about the HUD regulations and policies. But since then, we've developed a very strong backing with the broker world, and we still have about 60% of our businesses through the real estate investors.
So awesome, man. Yeah, thanks a lot for all you guys do. Great work with you guys over there. So, and to round us off, Mike, how about you and what you guys do over at Eagle Land, man?
Yeah, same for me. Thanks, guys, for having us. I love working with you guys. Love working with the whole Syria thing, and it's just been great. My name is Mike Coop. I'm the vice president at Eagle Land Title. We've been doing it about 18 years as a company. I started this I think 2 days after I was born. I started working in title. So it's just I don't know. It's been my life's work, I guess, for some reason. But the same with us. We do probably 60-70% of our business with investors, but we do the whole gamut as well. We're, you know, growing quickly and taking on more and more clients, and it's been awesome. We really like working with investors just because you guys are the fun ones, honestly. I mean, you guys are the go-getters. You guys are fun. it's fun, fast paced, and we enjoy it. So
we try to keep it interesting. So there's always some dust to knock off on some of these files and stuff. But no, it's good. So, and the whole purpose of doing this and getting you guys together on here is number one. I know it's always something that we put out within our education is make sure if you're wholesaling that you want to work with a title company that knows what wholesaling is, know how it works. They're investor friendly, that type of stuff. These companies, these are it. So these are, there's some really good title companies here in Indianapolis. These three gentlemen, they work with, some of the top-notch ones that we put right up there and that we close deals with all the time. So they know what a wholesale deal is. They know how to work with investors. They know all that stuff. But the purpose of tonight is really just kind of go through a couple things of if you are a wholesaler and you are, you're looking to get started, or maybe you've done a couple deals and you're looking to grow, any of those types of things. We're going to go over a couple topics tonight to really just kind of help you out, hopefully. If you have any questions, you have any input, anything like that, feel free to put it in the chat. If we don't talk about tonight, I will cover it next week we always like to do just a webinar the following Wednesday after a meetup, just to recap a lot of stuff. So if you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to throw it in the chat. And we might get to it tonight or we might get to it next week, but we will cover it at some point. And hopefully we can bring you the value and the content that you need to help you out with all just contract, title, wholesaling stuff. So, gentlemen, I just want to kind of start off with, I know I kind of sent you over a list of questions yesterday. And two of the questions I have at the top of the list are just kind of, we can kind of start off there. I really just want to know, like, what are some things that, that wholesalers can do to just make it easier for a title company? And then kind of the opposite side of that is like, what are wholesalers doing that make it a little bit more difficult for the title work and things like that on your guys' side? So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and just, Mike, we'll start with you. But let's just kind of start with what are a couple of those things that make it easier? So when a wholesaler sends over a file or a wholesaler sends over an email, you're like, all right, this is nice and neat. I know what's going on. So what are some of those things that really help you out?
Well, that's really a good part of it, is being nice and neat. Is a lot of times we get these purchase contracts, and I mean, you can't even make out who the buyer is because they're thrown together on a kitchen table. And I get it. That's, you want to get the deal done as fast as you can, but yeah, writing nicely on the purchase agreement, making sure everything's on there as far as who's paying what, if there's proration of taxes, that's a big one. The easier that's spelled out, the better. And the other thing for sure that we see that would help out is, at least in the wholesale side of things, it seems like that you guys deal with a lot of death. You guys deal with a lot of people who have recently lost family members. And knowing up front that those people are deceased definitely makes our job a little bit easier, just because we can ask for the things that we need even before getting the title search back.
Right. And hopefully those are all things that, a wholesaler, you're asking those questions when you're talking to those sellers of, like, whose name is actually on the title, are they living, are they, passed away, those types of things. But even like, I know we talk about this about every time, is the proration of taxes thing. I know that's a big one and stuff. So, Eric, when you get some files that, come over to you guys, or you get the email or they're sending it to you, on paper and stuff like that, what are some things, other than what Mike said, that really make it kind of easier on you guys to, start the process?
Yeah. So, and I know Mike and Matthew do this. We provide a lot of education. So part of it is we like to make sure our customers are better equipped in the field, but it also helps us on the back end, because if they come to us knowing what we want and what can make the deal go faster, it certainly helps. And so, just to his point, a clean version of a purchase agreement so we can make everything out. Contact information is extremely important. It'll save a lot of tracking things down. If you can go ahead, if you've got contact information for that seller, send that over. We work with our investors quite a bit and provide our authorization forms with them, and so they will just go ahead and get their authorization signed when they're doing the purchase agreement, should we need that to order payoffs and whatnot. I think we could have a whole conversation about tax prorations, but just making sure it's not always about what they're delivering to us as much as it is what they're delivering to their customer, which is that seller and or the end buyer. Making sure that they understand, those parties to the transaction understand it, and that they're not going to show up on closing day and have a blank stare on their face because they weren't expecting something. That, of course, comes up a lot with the tax prorations.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing that, I always like to, kind of talk to wholesalers about, make sure they understand of when you send that email over and say, hey, Matt Trojan, I'm going to close with you guys and Monument Title. Here's the file. Here's what's going on. Your job's not finished there. You still have to act as a mediator in there. You're the communication piece that in between the title company and the seller and things like that, even the end buyer and stuff. So you're still involved. You still might need to get some information. You might need to provide some information, dig some, dig around and try to find some of that stuff. So really good points, Eric. So Matt, you have anything to add to that, or just what are some of those things that maybe make things a little bit easier for you guys when that file gets sent over to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the points you've already made, you guys just understanding that your job is not done once you send that file over to us. And providing that contact information is key, especially when there are situations with who is entitled. So we can contact people, even if it's a clean title, just for us to be able to set up to confirm a closing date. And I think one thing that makes our, the whole process easier is having your counterparties, your buyer and your seller, on the same page of when we're going to be able to close. Promising one date to one side and another to the other is something that we, we'll see. And sellers are ready to close yesterday, but buyers trying to get funds together, or is forming the LLC or something. So I guess just communication to your parties and then providing that information to us definitely facilitates that whole process.
Yeah. So no, really good points. I know that's stuff that needs to be taken care of, and a lot of those things it just makes it so much easier on you guys when all that stuff's kind of right there, and those questions have already been asked. So that's great stuff. And maybe I should have started with this a little bit, because I do still get asked this question all the time. Even if people that have done a couple of deals tend to ask me this question. Eric, I'm going to kind of pick on you for this one and lean on you, because I've been through your title class, your title 101 class and stuff. But what is title? Like, why do wholesalers even need to know what title is?
Well, so title is basically the conveyance of a property, free and clear of any encumbrances. And so that's what that's what we're instructed to do. We don't, work for one party or the other. We're there as a third party vendor, just making sure that the property is free and clear. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, especially these properties that investors are buying and transacting on. I mean, there's a lot of junk in the trunk with those. And, I just had a meeting today with a new investor, and he wanted to do just a quick claim deed. Had no idea what the property might come with. And so that's what we're there to help, is to figure out, is the property behind on taxes? Are there judgments and liens that maybe the seller's not telling you about? We oftentimes have seen people get burned because they've done the quick claim route, and all of a sudden, they buy a property for $30,000 and it's got $80,000 in liens on it. So, with a title insurance policy, you're secure with that. Without a title insurance policy, you got to figure that out on your own. So it's the assurance of knowing that you've got something greater in your back pocket to help you if the need arises. I mean, we always hope the need doesn't arise, but it's there if you need it. It's just like any other insurance, except you're not making premium payments over and over and over for it, like car or health. You're making one upfront payment to make sure that property doesn't come back and bite you in the butt later.
There you go. Well said, my man. And I'm going to throw this in here too, and you guys can definitely correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I tell people this all the time. But I always tell them, when it comes to the contract, when it comes to the purchase agreement, the assignment contract, whatever it is, I always just tell them, like, hey, whatever title company you want to work with, no matter who it is, take it in and just have them review it and just say, like, hey, Mike, would you look over this title company? If I close some deals with you guys, would this work? Am I off base by saying that? I always just think, like, oh, if a title company wants to work with you, they're going to look over your contract. They're going to make sure it's okay. They're going to say, hey, you need to add this. You don't need this. They might not, go through with a fine tooth comb or anything. They're not going to give you any legal advice on it or anything, but it's just making sure that you guys have the right stuff in the right spot. So Matt, am I all right telling that to people
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Mike had made this point earlier, but really understanding what is in your contract. And, because sometimes if you just pull a contract off the internet, a lot of times there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily relevant to us, but they might be relevant to the parties that are closing with regard to possession, especially if there's a tenant or someone living in the property, or someone's going to be vacating it, ahead of the day of closing. So really understanding what is in your contract and what the relevant title the items that are relevant to us really mean. Like we've said before, how taxes are handled, how things are, who's paying what costs, and just understanding what you have, for your seller, for your buyer, and for us.
So I think it's really important. And one of the things too, I know a lot of people, if they're pulling, contracts off of bigger pockets or just off the internet, or some guru out in Arizona is selling a contract, it might work in Arizona. It might not work in Indiana, or, in Indiana. Might be some different stuff. I know there's one guru out there, definitely won't mention any names or anything, but he's selling a contract that is basically, it's for subject to properties. It has some different stuff in there. The sellers don't understand the language. So just making sure that you understand really what's in that contract going through it. And things like that, I think is really important. So, Mike, when it comes to contract stuff itself, is there anything big in there that you come across that really, when it comes to the closing table, that sellers or wholesalers have no idea kind of what's going on? Or is there any big things within those contracts that really, when it gets to the closing table, like I said, I'm just like, they're kind of at a loss. They don't really know what things mean or anything like that?
For the most part, it seems like the wholesalers we got. Well, first of all, let me say this. Are we going to breeze by the fact that Eric used the phrase junk in the trunk? Because I'm totally stealing that from now on.
I'll use it all the time.
That was awesome.
Sometimes it's a little more vulgar than that, but yeah, it's these properties are quite, I always think nothing could be more amazing than the one that you just gave me, and then all of a sudden I get more amazed.
That's probably a nice way to put what's on some of these files. So,
I loved it. That was awesome. But as far as the contract goes, it seems like wholesalers use a smaller contract for the most part, and that works well, I think, for your industry. I don't think that we do see some that use the MIBOR contract, and so much of that just doesn't apply to what you guys need. As far as wholesalers not knowing some of the stuff in there, it all goes back to proration of taxes, really. That's really the main thing that just so many wholesalers don't understand. And then because they don't understand, they don't tell their sellers exactly what they're getting. So the sellers come here and they're like, oh, well, we're getting $30,000 for the property, buyer's paying all closing costs, and they show up and they're getting $29,000. And they don't understand proration of taxes, which, if I wasn't in real estate, I wouldn't understand it either. Yeah. Just because it's Indiana and we're weird,
Yeah, especially being in arrears and everything like that. So it always throws some people off. So no, that's a really good point. I know a lot of stuff that comes back to that, and really understanding too I know that when it comes to even closing cost of, having that word all closing costs in there, I think makes a big difference too when it comes to, are they paying, just for the title policy, or are they paying just the closing fee, all those things that as a broker, I know kind of the language of all that is, but a lot of wholesalers don't understand a lot of that stuff and kind of the breakdown for it. But just by throwing that word all in there, all closing costs are paid by the buyer and things, I think really helps out a lot. So
yeah, and a lot of times too, when they say the owner's policy is paid by the seller, they don't understand that when you check that, or you say the owner's policy is paid by the seller, there's other fees that goes along with that owner's policy that becomes a seller paid fee.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So, is there anything other than, let's kind of talk about, we've kind of got into the contract stuff, and you guys can definitely kind of jump back anything else that you guys think of on that part. But let's go back to my original question was, what are some things that, wholesalers do to make it easier on you guys? Let's kind of take the opposite route of that then. Like, what are some things that maybe wholesalers do that make your job a little bit more difficult, and you're kind of like, oh man, I wish they would do this, I wish they would do that. There's some stuff on the contract we can definitely, we've talked about a little bit, and there might be a little bit more, but is there anything else on, just that wholesalers are doing that you're just like, oh man, next time let's do this, let's fix this, that hopefully this comes across differently, or I wish they need to take care of this. So Eric, is there anything that pops out with you on that stuff?
Communication. Don't go dark. Keep in mind, we're all trying to get to the closing date. Nobody gets paid until the closing date. We run into this with non-investors as well, but just communicate. Make sure you give us good numbers, good emails. Don't ignore us if we have questions. If we need your help, uncovering something, be available to communicate. And as we've talked about so much already, make sure you're communicating well with your customers, which is the seller and the buyer. Don't falsify things. Don't leave it up to us to wait till the closing table to explain how everything's going to work, because at that point we've seen deals fall through because you set false expectations. Now we're fortunate enough to work with a lot of a lot of you that, for example, Simple Wholesaling. You guys, it's like a done deal when you send it to us. Everybody, we know that your people are going to know what's going on, but there's a lot of new people out there that just think this is a quick way to make money without really having to be professional about it. And it's not true, because you can ruin your name very quickly if you don't set the expectations correctly.
Yeah, and that's how you can make it such a better reputation for yourself, is when you are able to explain it to your seller, and it's everything that you say, that you're helping them, you're easing their mind, because it's their livelihood that's at stake. It's a property that we're really talking about here. It's not just a paycheck that you're getting or anything, but when you're able to explain it to them, that's when it's like, oh man, Brian did a great job explaining this stuff to me. Everything was great at the closing table. Man, my aunt is going to do the same thing. I'm going to refer him to you. That's how this business works. And so having that great reputation by understanding what's going on in the title and being able to explain it is so important. That's part of making sure you're educating yourself on what really is going on. What's in your contract? What does that all really mean? And what does it mean for that seller to, receive the funds that they're going to, and just be able to close on the property, and then, the buyers and stuff like that on the other side too. So yeah. Matt, let's go to you real quick. Is there anything that as we're going through kind of maybe things that make it a little bit more difficult for you guys that wholesalers are doing that you wish they would kind of just help you guys out a little bit more?
Yeah. The big one that comes to mind right away would be last minute changes, or things where you're going to change how you're buying the property. You have everything, all the documents, everything's in your personal name, and then you're switching to an LLC or vice versa, or just any last minute price changes and things like that. That makes it more difficult for us, because that's rework on our part, and nobody gets paid for doing things over. So that's the biggest one that I would quickly say pops out to me that makes our job more difficult.
You mean it's not just as simple as like whitening it out and putting a new number in there, man?
We wish it was.
Yeah.
So, Mike, how about you? Is there anything that kind of sticks out to you that you're like, oh man, I wish these wholesalers would start doing this, or anything?
Yeah, well, those from Matthew and Eric, those were both, very good points. Both those things help us tremendously if people can do those. The other thing for us is just over-promising. We see a lot of that. We see, you got these people that they'll go meet somebody and say, oh, we can close cash in 48 hours. And maybe there was a time where it was easy to do that. It's right now is not the time to be able to do that. Yeah. So, and then you just make your seller mad, where if you tell them and under promise a little, we can get this done in 2 weeks. And then when you get it done in a week, they're thrilled, But with that being said, I understand how you guys business work, and how, if you say you can close in 2 weeks, the next guy's going to say he can close in 48 hours. So right. It's a difficult situation the wholesalers are in too. I get that as well.
Yeah, and it's a simple thing that you can change the language of, like, hey, we're ready to close this as soon as possible, but we got to make sure the title is okay. We want to make sure that that you're going to be secure, and the buyer's going to be we're going to be secure on the buyer side too. So as soon as title's ready, we'll be ready to close. Hopefully that's 48 hours. It might be a little bit longer, but we'll get it done as quickly as we can. So
we're perfectly fine being the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
we blame stuff on you guys all the time. No, so that's cool. So I know a big thing that wholesalers always kind of come back and have questions about too, especially when it comes to the closing side, is when they're doing an assignment versus a double close. So kind of the differences between those. Do you guys have any tips on, a lot of the stuff we're kind of talking about, a lot of it, kind of takes place with the assignments and stuff. But when it comes to a double closing and somebody's doing it, maybe they're doing it in the morning, buying it in the morning and then selling it in the afternoon and things. Do you guys have any tips for that when it comes about, of just the double closings and kind of working those, and how a wholesaler can just kind of help out on that in between there? Matt?
Yeah. So, one thing, this goes back to understanding what your contract reads. Because that affects what your spread is going to be. Because we've had them where, I think the wholesaler might have expected a certain spread. And they're just looking at the two purchase prices. And you have a, whatever 10, 12,000 spread in between the two purchase prices, but you're paying all the costs on one, and then maybe splitting it on when you're selling it. and then maybe you're not getting that proration on your purchase side, but then you're giving it on the BC side, and that can really eat into your margin. And then all of a sudden, people are getting upset or trying to go back to their counterparty and renegotiate, and that just delays closing or can blow up the deal altogether.
Yeah. So, Eric, how about you guys? So I'm there kind of with the double closings. Anything that you kind of see that might, just a little advice on what could help wholesalers out?
Yeah. So I go back to communication. As Matt was saying, it's really important that we obviously do allow the end buyer to fund a transaction so long as it will close on the same day. It's a very strategic process because the last thing we want is a mad seller sitting here waiting on their proceeds because we're waiting on buyer documents or we're waiting on buyer funds. And so as the middle person who's really communicating, as those are your clients, you're all clients to us at the title company, but your client is the seller and the buyer. And so it's really important that you set your buyer up to say, you really need to send your money in the day before or the morning of, no less. And to your seller, it's highly possible that the best solution for you is to get a wire, because it might be later in the day before they're able to actually send you the proceeds. But what's important for you to understand is the title company is not going to give away a deed without the money, and they're not going to give the seller money if it's talking about the buyer unless you've signed the deed. So I think it's just really important to keep the communication channels open, and obviously they need to fully understand the difference between a wholesale assignment and a wholesale double close. That could be probably a whole class by itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just keep going back to communication, make sure that they keep those channels open.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, how about you, man?
I agree. Communication is always huge. But I always try to get, when we have an ABC transaction, to try to get the BC to close first, sometime in the morning even, and then try to get the AB to close in the afternoon. That always kind of helps with it. There always is that chance, obviously, that something doesn't get done, especially when we're dealing with, we deal with a lot of people that are out of the country that are buying out of the state, and, the time change and things like that, roll into that. Eric's right. A lot of times people don't understand. They don't want to sign the deed unless you're getting them a check. Mm-hmm. And, I think it goes along with wholesaling. Like I said about the death thing, a lot of people are older people and come from a different, perspective on that than younger people do now these days. I mean, I don't know if it's more trusting or, that kind of thing, but yeah, I mean, same thing, just communication. And if it's at all possible to let your person know when you're buying the property that, hey, I'm a wholesaler, I'm going to be reselling this property, this is how it works, that's always great. I know that's not always possible, but that's always great to do it that way as well. That way just everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, just, you guys keep bringing up that thing of communication. It's the same thing too, and that's honest communication. We throw that word honest in there, just letting people know kind of what's going on. Of and maybe when you're getting the deal under contract, you don't have to 100% say like, hey, I'm not the end buyer. No, people act like they're trying to be that. They're trying to act like that end buyer, and that's their shtick. That's what they're going to do. But at least before you close on it, just be like, hey, just so you know, like my partner's going to actually end up buying this one or whatever it is, and so we're going to close on yours first. They're going to buy it in the afternoon, or just so they know what's going on. That open and honest communication, I think, is huge there. So great stuff, guys. Really appreciate that. So one of the other questions I just wanted to kind of bring up is, so we talked a little bit about contract stuff and kind of going through that. Is there anything, not that you have to, maybe there's not something, maybe there's something that's in the top of your head, but you guys have just like a story that you would like to share on anything of like, man, this one time this contract got sent over to me on, I heard somebody, got sent over in a brown paper bag one time, or anybody have any just like crazy, contract stories of how things come over or what was on a contract or anything like that? Anybody have any crazy stories they want to share?
We've gotten it one time on a wet nap. So, just a tiny little square. Eric, went to buy a house from Matthew. No address, no anything, just buying a house. I don't think it's as much what we see on contracts as much as what we don't see on contracts. Yeah. In my opinion, they don't, as Mike said, a lot of one-pagers, we have a one-page purchase agreement that we make available, and a lot of very small print, but it does fit all on one page. But I mean, we see handwritten stuff. We see people that try to take pictures of their purchase agreement and send it to us, and it's like you can't even read it because that happens all the time. Like the pictures, right? Like give us a clean picture, please. Try to at least put it on your kitchen counter and get it squared up and in good light if you're going to do it that way, because it's very hard for us to read if it's not clean. So,
Mike, how about you? Any crazy stories when it comes to just contracts, or just any just crazy stuff that might happen that didn't expect to happen with a wholesaler at a closing or anything like that?
Yeah, the picture thing's great. We get those all the time too. And half the time I'm like, look, just take a picture, text it to me.
Yes.
And then I can at least clean it up when I send it to myself via email. So
Right.
as far as crazy things on contracts, not so much. Crazy things with people always happen. And everything from siblings fighting over money to spouses fighting over money. We've seen some interesting things for sure.
Yeah. So Matt, you have anything to add to that of just any crazy stories or anything that pops up in there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really a super crazy story, but one thing that comes to mind, we had one where a couple people just walked in. It was a guy who had a property, wanted to sell it, and he just, his neighbor across the street or next door, they came in and basically told us, okay, these are the details. We actually handled it when the guy purchased it, so we had a prior closed in the last year. So it came in the morning and gave us all the details. I asked them, okay, how are taxes being handled, who's paying what. But they came in. I just kind of wrote it out on one of our little monument sticky pads, and that was like the purchase agreement that they really agreed to. And then they closed that afternoon with us. So like I said, we had that prior file, so we closed really in a few hours for him, and the guy had all the money and everything. So it's it's, especially when it's a cash deal, it's cash is king and makes closings go a lot easier. So that's actually one point, going back to what we were talking about before, on those double close transactions, understanding where the money's coming from your end buyer. If they say they're closing in cash, but really it's going to be like a hard money loan or a private money loan, or the funds are coming from overseas or somewhere else, that can delay that closing, that they don't necessarily realize until all of a sudden they have to wire the money and it's not available. That's another one, a tip that on double closing, make sure that money is solid, because that's what's going to make the whole transaction come together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We actually had an issue with that. I think it's been about 2 weeks ago now, but our funding was actually coming from one of our sources was coming from California, and one of our acquisition, or our lady set up the closing for like 9 o'clock in the morning, but the funding wasn't going to get there because it's coming from California and stuff. So understanding all those things, and of course we, that communication piece, we're on top of it, trying to help out, trying to do what we can, but knowing where that money is coming from and knowing what it is, the time frame and stuff like that is just so crucial and things. So yeah, be careful of that. So you kind of brought up, that deal that Matt's talking about of just like, somebody coming walking in the morning, basically like, hey, let's close this deal and stuff. I feel like that's a lot of time. Mike was bringing up that 48-hour rule or 48 hours and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of times that's what people expect of you guys. It's like just a drive through, like, here's the paperwork, give me the deed, like, let's go, let's kind of get in and out and stuff. But
I literally had that today, Brian. I literally had that today. A group of 3 people walk in. One is a translator for the Spanish speaking. The other is Mandarin and speaks very little English. The appointment was set for us to go through a purchase agreement with them, and they were going to do a land contract. And by the time we got done, all they wanted to do was a quick claim deed. And they thought we could just do it right there and they could give $30,000 at the table. And I said, no, wait, like, there's a little bit of legwork we have to do, it was just, you're right. People just expect that, like, it is a drive-through. Like, we can just go and get this done, and that's all there is to it. There's no legwork behind it, and that just goes back to the education. I mean, these weren't investors; these were, just individuals trying to transfer a property.
Yeah. So let's get into that a little bit though. Like, kind of what all work do you guys have to do on the? I'm one of those people. I know a little bit about it, and I've kind of talked to all of you guys and stuff like that. But I'm kind of like, hey, I send the file and I know, 7 days later I'm going to close on. They do their thing. So what's behind the curtain? What all takes place of kind of what all goes into making sure the documents are prepped, the title is clear, and all that stuff. Mike, so what all? Like I said, what's behind the curtain? What all do we not see of what's going on with title?
I would say it's probably like I don't know, I haven't actually counted it, but probably an 8-10 stage process from start to finish. So, I mean, from the time we get the order to it goes to a searcher, an abstractor, a title plant, whatever anybody's using, they have to go out, research the property, find out what liens are on it, check judgments, state tax liens, federal tax liens. And then at that point, it comes back to be examined by an examiner. So that person will actually take the actual search that the abstractor did, figure out what's on there, what they can clear off, what they can't clear off, what they need to put on title. And then at that point, it has to be typed up. And then at that point is when we send it out to the client. And that's usually the first time the client sees it. And a lot of times when we send them out, we don't know what that person knows about, what that seller knows about. We don't know that they may not know they have 10 judgments, or they may know they have 10 judgments. So a lot of times we'll send that title work out and they're like, well, this ain't me, and this ain't me, and this ain't me. And we're like, that's how we find that part out. So at that point is when we start clearing title, ordering HOAs, ordering payoffs, those kind of things, at the kind of a simultaneous as it's getting typed. And then from then, once it's clear to close, then we move to closing, and then we can set a closing date, and then the closer sets that up, sets up the settlement statement, sends it out to all the parties, and then most people think it's done at that point once they get to the closing table, but for us, that's when it's only about half done. So at that point, we fund it, send out the documents to be recorded. Then that comes back. We do all of our final prep, final stuff. And then at least for us, at that point is when we, scan all the files and upload them so we can keep them for till eternity, I guess. Up in the cloud.
How long do we keep those?
Up in the cloud somewhere that I still don't understand the cloud.
Yeah.
I'll never understand that.
So, no, man, I appreciate that. I think I think it is so important for people to understand kind of what all goes into that process and like how much work is done on that back end and stuff. So really appreciate that. Matt, Eric, do you guys have anything to add to kind of what Mike had on there?
No, it's definitely a more thorough run through than what I would have given. No, same. I imagine we all go through very, very similar process, and then we might have different different ways that we go about it. But yeah, certainly, we have the search and then clearing title and setting up closing, and then the post closing is the recording of the documents and making sure everything actually gets transferred into your name or your buyer's name.
Yeah, I mean, Mike put it perfectly, and that's what when we do our Title 101, that's we go through step by step, because I think it's important that, as anybody on this would agree, most people don't realize all the back end work that we're doing, and so they just think we're just dragging our feet, we're taking our time. Why can't we just get to the closing table? But all of it is to help protect them as the seller and the buyer. Now, of course, we're trying to protect ourselves too. We can only get so much insurance for ourselves, but we want to make sure that what we're conveying, I mean, that's our job, is to make sure it's free and clear and marketable title. And so it's just really important. We can't rush it. I mean, yeah, we can tell you we'll rush this file, but we're not actually going to do anything different than we do with any other file. We have to take each step. It's a very meticulous process. And, at least here we have 30 plus people, and some are in different states and some are in different countries. And, we have a very strategic timeline of where everything needs to go and who needs to touch that file. So, yeah.
So there's no rush on things. I was like, oh, this is a Brian Snyder file. It's a VIP status. Let's get this thing through.
That's what I do, Brian.
Okay, all right.
Well, and you guys know, I mean, we do assign like one person to your files. I mean, we have several customers that are doing the volume, and it's just appropriate to have account reps that kind of handle those particular clients.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. No, thank you so much, guys. So I know, kind of speaking of drive-throughs, we were just kind of talking about that a little bit ago, that people kind of expect to be a drive-through service. So you guys just went through, going through the whole pandemic and everything with COVID and stuff like that. I know you guys had to do some different stuff. Some of that kind of being like, hey, we need to do things on the curbside signing and stuff like that. So it might have been a little bit like a drive-through at one point. Is there anything that wholesalers need to be aware of just kind of what's going on with where we stand with COVID and just anything they need to do from a wholesaler standpoint when it comes to putting the file or getting the files over to you guys and then getting to the closing table and stuff like that that we need to be aware of?
As far as COVID, for us at least, don't bring your cousins, nieces, nephews, uncles, and brothers to the closing. We have had it happen, and we have had to turn people away. We have done the curbside thing, but for the most part, we're still allowing in-office closings. We're just trying to limit the amount of people, spread out the chairs. We, I'm sure these guys are the same. We sanitize everything after each closing, and do our part, do what we can, make masks available, things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I never even thought of. Is that communication piece too of like, hey, make sure that it's just whoever's going to sign the documents are the people that need to go to that closing and stuff like that during this time and stuff. So that's a really good point. Matt, do you have anything else to add to kind of anything that wholesalers need to be aware of during this through the pandemic that we're still going through?
Yeah, so I think one would be the one thing that we didn't mention is there are times and situations that we find ourselves in where it may seem like we're dragging our feet or files taking a long time to clear or whatever. We are a lot of what we do, we're dependent on other people, external to our title company. So whether that's getting payoffs or just having people respond to us. So, unfortunately, sometimes your file is at the mercy of people that, it's out of all of our control. Ultimately, if we're trying to get a payoff or we're trying to help people get paid, so that they release the lien that they have on the property. Unfortunately, with certain people, that's still not enough motivation for them to expedite, the request that we're putting out to them. So that's one thing I think, especially when it comes to mortgage payoffs, some places are just slammed and their turnaround time is worse than normal because they're working with limited staff or some of the people are working from home. So I think just understanding that, when we are communicating that, we're waiting on something to come back and, it's not something that we're trying to delay closing in any way, that we're depending on other people outside of our company to perform in order for us to be able to, again, convey that clear title to you or to your buyer.
Yeah. Do you feel like some of that stuff has slowed down, like since like when COVID hit, or is it starting to pick back up now, or where do you kind of see with that stuff?
Yeah, for us, sometimes if it's like a judgment, especially some law offices, I think they just have a lot going on. And some banks, they basically, you go in a queue and there's no way to really get, rush that to the top of the queue. They don't really care how important your closing is because to them, it's just another request for information. So I think it's not as bad as it has been. I think people are, I guess, figuring their systems out or their processes out, but there was a time where we were running into that on certain files where it was just slowing the whole thing down. Everyone else is ready to go. We're ready to go as soon as we have that, that confirmation of that figure from a payoff lender or a judgment holder. We can close, but it's just waiting to obtain that.
Yeah. So, Eric, anything you want to add to that, or just kind of what's during this during the COVID time of like what anything wholesalers might need to do a little extra or anything?
Well, and to Matt's point, I mean, you think about it, other than healthcare workers, we're one of the only industries that has been strong going to our office every single day from the beginning. We have been considered essential in every government, executive order by the governor. And so while that's true, as Matt's saying, not every other vendor that we need to obtain information from has been doing that. So they've been scrambling, trying to figure out how to work from home. So like he says, trying to clear a judgment sometimes or get bank payoffs, it can be like pulling teeth. And, the search for us anyway, that hit pretty early because the counties were disrupted. So it was hard to get some of the information we might need. We're not seeing that anymore. Most of the counties, obviously, we operate in all 92. About 70% of it is right here in the Donut counties and Marion County, but we haven't had much issue. but just evolving. We've kind of always said from the beginning that it's business as unusual. Because although we're doing transactions the same way we've always done transactions in terms of the legwork, we immediately tried to prevent any of our own staff from doing closings. So we were doing all mobile closers so that we wouldn't bring anything back into our office. You can even see we had these nice little dividers put on all of our closing tables to try and prevent people from actually, I guess, spitting on each other. I don't know. Did we used to do that? But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, Matt and Mike, but we go through a heck of a lot more pins these days because we tell everyone, take them with you or throw them away once you touch them. So we've certainly had a lot more cost to masks and pins and sanitizer and all of that to just basically produce the same work and to get the same amount of money. So I think if there was just some patience, I think that's the biggest thing. Don't expect anything different really from us as you would from ordering food at a restaurant, or every industry has just been thrown into a blender and things just might take a little bit longer, but we're still going to get you to the finish line.
No, awesome stuff, guys. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you joining me on here today. I got one last question for you, and then we'll get you out of here. Let's kind of go around the horn with this one. It's kind of just, if for those new wholesalers out there, what's just kind of one last little tip or advice for them, or just like words of wisdom or something like that you could just impart onto them when it comes to working with contracts or title companies or wholesaling in general. So, Mike, let's start with you, man.
Well, I think the main focus of the whole night has been communication. I mean, that's been mainly what we've all said. That's the biggest. I mean, that's the one thing that we all see kill deals. That's the biggest deal killer in my opinion. That's a big one. The other thing is just the one thing I wanted to mention to wholesalers and to anybody that's listening is, and I'm sure these guys have ran into it too, there's a lot of fraud in our industry right now. And just to make sure that when we're sending out wiring instructions, most wholesalers know this now, but a lot of the new people don't. Make sure that you're having your clients contact us directly. Make sure that you're not forwarding wiring instructions to people because especially in this COVID era where people are trying to find ways to make money, I feel like the fraud's gotten even worse. So that would be my biggest advice, is the theme of the night, and then making sure that they that wiring instruction thing keep fraud from happening to them, to us, to everybody.
Yeah, really good tip. Really good tip. Eric, how about you?
I think finding a mentor, finding somebody to help hold your hand through those first few deals. Simple Wholesaling, of course, that's what you're doing right now. Like, this is a mentor group. I mean, while it's a networking, the overall part of it is to network. You guys are great at mentoring, and I love being able to recommend that to new investors. And then come talk to one of us, Matt, Mike, me. Let us help you understand how to talk about that contract, what needs to be in the contract, the title process, so that you're more educated in the field while you're talking to your clients. I mean, you will get so much further in your career of doing this, unless it's just a hobby for you. You'll get so much further by actually helping educate yourself. So I would say attach yourself to a mentor, someone who's willing to help get you through those first few deals so that things make sense.
Yeah, very good. Very good advice. I like it. So, Matt, how about you?
Yeah, so I think one would be, don't be afraid to be transparent, at least, the very least with us. I guess it goes to the communication point that we are harping on every few minutes here. But, if you know that there are details that are relevant to a transaction, let us know, because eventually it's either going to come out or we're going to need it. And then, I don't think transparency ever hurts with your parties as well. If you are masquerading as the buyer and then all of a sudden, because sometimes people get weird about seeing another name on the closing statement other than the people they've been dealing with. And that's something that, with newer wholesalers or ones that aren't as experienced, the way that you find your way to communicate. I mean, I've seen that with people that we've worked with over time, kind of figure out the right way to phrase what you're trying to do, but that transparency I think is appreciated by all parties.
Yeah. So
can I say one more thing, Matt? You just made me think of that. So Probably the one thing I stress more than anything in my new consults when I meet with a new investor is how they represent themselves in the transaction. And I know you know this, Brian, but misrepresenting yourself is the quickest way to get in trouble. The Attorney General in Indiana, while they don't have a stance on wholesaling right now, we know that it's certainly been under scrutiny in other states, which is why we've seen an influx from out-of-state investors coming in to do their wholesale deals here. Yeah. You cannot misrepresent yourself. You do not represent the buyer or the seller when you're acting as a wholesaler. That is what you need a real estate license to do. And you may have one. There's a lot of investors that have real estate licenses, but unless you're acting as a realtor in the transaction, don't represent yourself to do that. You have a piece of paper, which is an agreement between you and the seller, and you're trying to sell that piece of paper to somebody else. And that is your initial piece in the transaction as a wholesaler. So we get complaints all the time. Now just for example, like we won't, as a title company, we're not going to represent people trying to go after wholesalers because that's also a client of ours on the law side. But it happens all the time where we get complaints from realtors who, don't understand they had to go to all this schooling and they had to, update their CE classes. But now wholesalers can just go out and basically do a realtor's job. Well, not really, because it's illegal. So make sure you're not misrepresenting yourself and make sure you have the proper documentation to prove that. Yeah,
no, really good stuff, guys. Really good tips, really good advice. Just really, like I said, really good words of wisdom as well. So really appreciate it. All right, guys, our time is about up. So before I get out of here, I want to give you guys a chance for people to be able to reach out to you if they need to, or so if you want to give out maybe your good contact information or website to go to or anything where they can find out information about you or about your company. So where would be kind of the best place for them to do that? Matt, let's start with you, man.
Yeah, so if you do have an order that you would want to send over to us, and that's our order entry team is that first point of contact. It's just the word orders at mticllc.com, and that stands for Monument Title Insurance Company. My email, my name is, as you see on the screen, Matthew Trojan. So it's just mtrojan@mticllc.com. You can reach out to me, and I deal with investors and wholesalers every single day. So if you have a question or a situation that you're looking to work through, go ahead and reach out to us, and we can get you taken care of.
So awesome, Mike. How about you?
Well, for some reason, I have pretty much all of our stuff set up that from the initial to the end kind of goes through my email.
I don't think I actually have an email for you. I just always send it to closings at Eagle Land. So.
Yeah, that's it. That's me. That goes right to my computer. That goes right to my phone. That goes right to my home. closings@eaglelandtitle.net. That's that basically it comes to me, and then I sort it out to where it goes from there to either to our closers or to whoever is setting it up. And I don't know, I just like to have my hand in everything. At some point, I'm going to have to probably stop doing that, but or you can contact us at 317-870-8444. We try really hard to answer every phone call and not let anything go to voicemail if at all possible. So
awesome stuff. Eric?
Yeah, so if you are sending orders over, our order entry team is at contracts, that's plural, contracts at hockerlaw.com, HOCKERLAW.com. My personal email, which I'd be happy to work one-on-one with anyone that needs some additional hand-holding, is eric.downing, so eric.downing at hockerlaw.com. And you can reach me at 317-578-1630, extension 37.
So awesome stuff. And when I share this with the group, I'll put this on. I'll make sure it's in our group and stuff like that. I'll include you guys' emails in there and stuff like that in the comments. So if you guys do need to reach out to them or you didn't get that, I'll have that in there and try to help out. But thank you guys so much, Matthew, Mike, Eric. Appreciate you guys so much. Great information, great value, great content. Like I said, those of you that are out there looking for, hey, what's that title company I need to work with, or I need to recommend to my buyers or my sellers, anything like that, these are the guys to go to. They do awesome work. They're awesome at their job. Just really good guys too. So I feel really happy to get to know all you guys. Get to work with you guys as well. So thank you so much for joining us on here tonight. And with that, we'll see you guys in September for another meetup. Not sure what we're doing yet, but I'll have that information out soon. So take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Awesome job. You guys are good.